I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. I'm continuing in the Doctrine and Covenants. What we read last was a revelation of comfort to Joseph and Sidney Rigdon as they were on their missionary journey up into Canada. I believe the first missionary trip outside the United States. And they are given comfort concerning their families, concerning Zion, and encouragement on their mission. And that was in October of 1833. We also had in August, so 2 months prior to that, we had a couple of revelations about the state of the saints in Missouri and how you can be justified, or what needs to happen for you to be justified in retaliating against your enemies. Those were good revelations too. But now we pick it up in section 101. And the heading here says, Revelation given to Joseph Smith the prophet at Kirtland, Ohio, December 16, 1833. At this time, the saints who had gathered in Missouri were suffering great persecution. Mobs had driven them from their homes in Jackson County, and some of them had tried to establish themselves in Van Buren County, but persecution followed them. The main body of the saints was at that time in Clay County, Missouri. Threats of death against individuals of the church were many. The people had lost household furniture, clothing, livestock, and other personal property, and many of their crops had been destroyed. Now, after these persecutions started, 2 men, I can't remember who they were dispatched back to Kirtland. And it was sometime in November that they reached Kirtland and tell Joseph and the saints there what's going on. Now, during those persecutions, while that was happening in Missouri, just a couple of notes of what's going on in Kirtland is that, first of all, they have bought a printing press, and Joseph Smith's brother, Don Carlos, has moved in with him to learn the printer's trade. They also had, on November 13th, the meteor shower, which Joseph Smith writes about as being one of the signs of the last days, the stars falling from heaven. And with this glorious display of God's power, I think it was just after that news comes from Missouri of what's going on. And then he writes more about the persecutions in Missouri before we get to this section, section 101, given on December 16th. So this is after, as it says, after they've been driven from both Jackson and Van Buren and are now gathering in Clay County. Now, this section is fairly long, so I will be dividing it into at least 2 readings. I'm going to try and get it into, but I might need to do 3. We'll see how the timing goes. So let us read section 101. Verily I say unto you, concerning your brethren who have been afflicted and persecuted and cast out from the land of their inheritance, I, the Lord, have suffered the affliction to come upon them, wherewith they have been afflicted in consequence of their transgressions. Yet I will own them, and they shall be mine in that day when I shall come to make up my jewels. Therefore they must needs be chastened and tried, even as Abraham, who was commanded to offer up his only son. For all those who will not endure chastening, but deny me, cannot be sanctified. Behold, I say unto you, there were jarrings and contentions and envyings and strifes and lustful and covetous desires among them. Therefore by these things they polluted their inheritance. They were slow to hearken unto the voice of the Lord their God. Therefore the Lord their God is slow to hearken unto their prayers, to answer them in the day of their trouble. In the day of their peace they esteemed lightly my counsel, but in the day of their trouble of necessity they feel after me. Verily I say unto you, notwithstanding their sins, my bowels are filled with compassion towards them. I will not utterly cast them off, and in the day of wrath I will remember mercy. I have sworn, and the decree hath gone forth by a former commandment, which I have given unto you, that I would let fall the sword of mine indignation in behalf of my people, and even as I have said, it shall come to pass. Mine indignation is soon to be poured out without measure upon all nations, and this will I do when the cup of their iniquity is full. And in that day all who are found upon the watchtower, or in other words, all mine Israel, shall be saved. And they that have been scattered shall be gathered, and all they who have mourned shall be comforted, and all they who have given their lives for my name shall be crowned. Let us pause there. So, God is explaining why he has allowed these persecutions to happen. He didn't cause them, but he did allow it to happen because, and he doesn't say anything specific. I'm sure he could, but this is not meant to be a indictment of individuals. This is meant to explain the effect on the many. Because if one person is wicked, God isn't going to punish all the people. It is when all the people, or a majority of the people, are unrighteous, that is when his wrath comes out against the people. And so we have the jarrings, contentions, envyings, strifes, lustful and covetous desires. All these things, they weren't living the way they were supposed to be. They weren't living the gospel. And because of that, they had no claim on God's protection. But I do like this. When indignation is soon to be poured out without measure upon all nations. Again, this is going to start with the Civil War. And the Civil War is, in large measure, the wrath of God poured out against the United States of the time for their treatment of the saints. And even though it was just a border state with a relatively small population, Missouri had some of the worst fighting and casualties in the entire Civil War. By population, I think it lost a higher percentage of its population to the war than any other state. And it was just ravaged. So I find that interesting, that God is here telling you, I am going to be pouring out my wrath. And we see that about 20 years later. But let us continue, verse 16. Therefore, let your hearts be comforted concerning Zion, for all flesh is in mine hands. Be still, and know that I am God. Zion shall not be moved out of her place, notwithstanding her children are scattered. They that remain and are pure in heart shall return, and come to their inheritances, they and their children, with songs of everlasting joy, to build up the waste places of Zion. And all these things that the prophets might be fulfilled. And behold, there is none other place appointed than that which I have appointed, neither shall there be any place appointed than that which I have appointed for the work of the gathering of my saints, until the day cometh when there is found no more room for them. And then I have other places which I will appoint unto them, and they shall be called stakes for the curtains or the strength of Zion. But behold, it is my will that all they who call on my name and worship me according to mine everlasting gospel should gather together and stand in holy places, and prepare for the revelation which is to come, when the veil of the covering of my temple and my tabernacle, which hideth the earth, shall be taken off, and all flesh shall see me together. And every corruptible thing, both of man, or of the beasts of the field, or of the fowls of the heavens, or of the fish of the sea, that dwells upon all the face of the earth, shall be consumed. And also that of element shall melt with fervent heat, and all things shall become new, that my knowledge and glory may dwell upon all the earth. And in that day the enmity of man and the enmity of beasts, yea, the enmity of all flesh, shall cease from before my face. And in that day whatsoever any man shall ask, it shall be given unto him. And in that day Satan shall not have power to tempt any man. And there shall be no sorrow, because there is no death. In that day an infant shall not die until he is old, and his life shall be as the age of a tree. And when he dies he shall not sleep, that is to say, in the earth, but he shall be changed in the twinkling of an eye, and shall be caught up, and his rest shall be glorious. Yea, verily I say unto you, in that day when the Lord shall come, he shall reveal all things, things which have passed, and hidden things which no man knew, things of the earth by which it was made, and the purpose and the end thereof, things most precious, things that are above, and things that are beneath, things that are in the earth, and upon the earth, and in heaven. And all they who suffer persecution for my name, and endure in faith, though they are called to lay down their lives for my sake, yet shall they partake of all this glory. Wherefore, fear not even unto death, for in this world your joy is not full, but in me your joy is full. Therefore care not for the body, neither the life of the body, but care for the soul, and for the life of the soul. And seek the face of the Lord always, that in patience ye may possess your souls, and ye shall have eternal life. When men are called unto mine everlasting gospel, and covenant with an everlasting covenant, they are accounted as the salt of the earth, and the savour of men. They are called to be the savour of men. Therefore, if that salt of the earth lose its savour, behold, it is thenceforth good for nothing, only to be cast out and trodden under the feet of men. Behold, here is wisdom concerning the children of Zion, even many, but not all. They were found transgressors, therefore they must needs be chastened. He that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that abaseth himself shall be exalted. This portion is given as a comfort for Zion. This is, it even says that, verse 16, therefore let your hearts be comforted concerning Zion. Zion is not moved. Zion is still in Independence, Missouri. The people are scattered, the saints have scattered, but Zion is still there, and eventually the saints will be gathered to Zion until Zion is full. Then we will gather to the stakes. Stakes, as it says, the stake called stakes because they are for the strength of Zion, just as a tent stake is there to hold the tent up, to give it strength and stability. Then we get another great description of the second coming in the Millennium. All that is corruptible is destroyed off the earth. Not just men, but fish, animals, birds, anything that has not fulfilled the measure of its creation, anything that has not lived according to the law that God has established for it. All of it destroyed. Then we live in the Millennium when an infant will grow to the age of a tree and then be twinkled. But remember, he started this revelation with Zion needed to be chastened. The saints in Zion were not living properly. There was much wrong in there, and they needed to be chastened. And then he goes into this comfort. Zion, all those who are faithful will see the glory of Zion rise, whether they see it in this life or they are with Christ when he returns. Either way, they will see the glory of Zion. But we still need to chasten it. So we have the two bookends. We chastened them because they were not living properly. Zion was not, we had all the comfort, then Zion was not where they needed to be, and so they needed to be chastened. We also have this comparison, the salt of the earth, which again is taken from Matthew. We are the salt of the earth. The saints are the salt of the earth. Anyone who has entered the covenant with God is the salt of the earth. Those who are baptized, in other words. But I think this is getting long enough. I'm going to end it here. This is the first 42 verses. We will pick it up again in our next reading, so I will see you there.